We're going to the disadvantage and then the case study. On the disadvantage, her first argument is that troops are already being deployed to Eastern Europe, but she misses two arguments. The first is that our card is more recent and it indicates that troops are being pulled out. Because it's more recent, it better handles the current situation. But the second argument was hashed out in a process, that the plan was to increase the amount of troops, but we didn't have that many troops until the plan happens. They concede that they increased the number of available troops for the United States, and that means that they come back into the Balkans. Her second argument is an extension of Logan's funding argument, but it's not good enough because they free up funding too. That is something that they've conceded, and it's more likely to trigger the link because they lead to the type of equipment that Russians are scared of. Her last argument is that instability outweighs, but that doesn't answer the argument that this is inherently more unstable. First, because the world's second largest nuclear power is more scared about troops in the Balkans than they are about Afghanistan. But second, because historically this has led to Russian paranoia. That sort of Russian paranoia leads to the largest nuclear war imaginable between the United States and Russia. Their only argument on case is that Russia could possibly be drawn into a Central Asian war, but I don't know why the United States would be drawn in if we withdraw, which means it's more likely that a larger nuclear war would happen as a result of the disad. They've also conceded that they send troops to Eastern Europe, which means there's a 100% risk of a link to the disad. The case debate. They've conceded the weakness argument, that even if the strategy isn't necessarily the best one, we look weak if we withdraw, which means that locals don't want to cooperate with our counterterrorism troops, which means that those counterterrorism troops don't have the ability to solve because they don't have the ability to do things like gather intelligence from locals. As a result, they don't have the ability to solve counterterrorism. The second argument is that we can only hope to complete the current mission. They don't answer the argument that even if COIN isn't 100% effective, it is more effective to continue the mission than it is to cancel it. There's only a risk it has the ability to stabilize. The last argument is that counterterrorism doesn't work because it doesn't focus on the right things. They don't have the ability to analyze what's happening in Pakistan as well as they would have in Afghanistan. Oh, right.
We'll talk about the case debate, and then we'll talk about the disadvantage. All of the negatives arguments on case might make a little bit of sense in a world where they provided an alternative that allowed for a stable Afghanistan, but all their impacts are inevitable in a world where they have not provided this alternative, which means that Afghanistan is going to become unstable regardless of, or in any world where COIN troops are always or still there. They say that CT or counterterrorism looks bad, and it doesn't necessarily work, but it is literally a try or die option for us. Our long evidence as well as our Boyle evidence say that any presence of COIN means that overlapping doctrines are both going to fail, which means that there's only a chance that counterterrorism can solve if we pull out COIN troops. They said it's more effective to continue a mission because not continuing a mission makes it look like we're about to fail. But that failure is inevitable. We already look like we're failing. Our Boyle evidence and our long evidence both prove that important United States allies are no longer believing that the United States is working. You should also prefer our evidence because it's composed in the context of military strategy and the facts that are actually on the ground. They don't talk about the facts on the ground. They just talk about what strategies supposedly could work, whereas our evidence actually talks about what's already happening. Now, they have not answered our solvency evidence that says that we are able to increase the amount of allies that are working with the United States because right now they're beginning to abandon us. This means that we probably solved their disad because Russia would not want to attack us if we had a whole bunch of allies. Go to the disad. Even if you give them full weight of the disad, we still outweigh because the impacts of the affirmative are bigger than the disad's impacts. First of all, instability in Afghanistan is an imminent threat because of the COIN mission. Groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are making massive comebacks that are not only causing further tension and destroying central Afghani government, but also makes peace and stability impossible. It's also more likely that Russia would care about U.S. involvement in Afghanistan because they have a large strategic interest there, like oil and political allies. The Balkans evidence is about paranoia, but we've always had paranoia between the United States and Russia. Now, the link argument doesn't make a ring true. Just because we increase the amount of available troops doesn't mean we would send them all to Eastern Europe. Besides, we've had more troops in Eastern Europe before, so I don't see why the link would necessarily be triggered.